Okay, so when we look at PinPoint, I wanted to explain to you first what you're looking at. And what I mean by what you're looking at is when you log in, you are logging into a file room. When you log into a file room, you have cabinets. These cabinets could be whatever they are that your organization has. These could be payables and vendors. This could be customers, could be employees, could be management stuff, communications and marketing, whatever they are, whatever your organization needs, that's what you'll have in your system. Now, let's just take an example. Let's say that this was employees right here. If I were to open the employee cabinet, I'll be able to look at folders, which each folder theoretically is probably representing an employee. I say that because this folding or file system would be based on how your organization set the system up. So you log in, you're going to access to a cabinet. At that cabinet, you will look for the folder that you want to open, and once you open that folder, you'll be able to see the document or documents that are within. So from a very, schematic sense of the word, this is what you're about to look at. Now, when you log into the system, one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to use the menu here to select the buttons, because one of the things I'll talk about at the end of this class is how to set up what we'll refer to as your favorite buttons. And your favorite buttons will be reflected in your profile. But I'm going to use the menu because of the fact that I'm not going to even look over to that side or use my favorite buttons to take shortcuts. Now, in this case, my home button is currently set to come to this screen, which enables basically 6 different choices here. Those 6 choices I could still find through the menu, though. So because this is a class where we're actually kind of navigating and learning the system, I'm going to use the menu here rather than some of the shortcuts, and I will describe this at the end. With that, I'm going to select on menu. Now, think about 2 things. I'm normally looking for files by locating those, or I might be putting files in. Now, there are ways the system can file documents, but if you were going to put some files into the system, you would be filing those. There's also things that will be talked about as far as in the second class or the advanced user as to deal with if you're using workflows and what workflow you have outstanding currently at this time. So right at the moment, I'm going to start with locating. Now, when I pick on locating, you will notice there's an awful lot of choices here. Now, basically, the reason that we have all these choices are for 2 reasons. Number one is the look of the screen. In other words, somebody that might like that kind of Explorer, or if you use a Mac, Finder look, where you kind of click on a folder, open up subdividers or organizers within, and then click on those, and I'll show you that shortly. I particularly like this screen that I use, but then if you start looking at some of the other screens, in other words, these 2 right here are really looking at it from a folder perspective, meaning I've gone into the employee or I've gone into the vendor. Where this versioning, which we'll talk about in the second class, is where you can look at different versions of the document and some of these other views. One of the things that I'm going to pick on is this browse folders, this folder details, and this content search in this class. Now, I could go here, as I mentioned, and click on any of these 3, but now that I have this menu here, I wanted to show you how I could get to these in one of 3 ways. Number 1, I can go to the menu and select the particular screen that I'd like to open. Number 2, I might have it where I have a menu similar to this, where I could simply click on the click on the folder or the option that I'd like to open and open up that particular option. The other thing is, or the other way, is based on right here, where I can set up favorite buttons. And with these favorite buttons, what I can do is have it go directly to that screen. So right now, I'm going to open up and take a look at my structure. Now, I want to mention, first of all, that when I click on this view right here, this particular view to locate information is based on what I mentioned before, a Windows Explorer or a Mac as in Finder, where you're looking at folders and cabinets, and then you open one and there's ones underneath it. And the reason I also wanted to bring that up is because I do a lot of different presentations, and I have a lot of cabinets in here. So when I click to open this particular look, you'll notice I just have a whole bunch of cabinets. Again, it's only because I, as an administrator for this fictitious system, have built these. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of get rid of a bunch of these by doing a search. And right at the moment, what I'm in the process of doing is I want to show you a few different looks into the data. So, first and foremost, if you notice there, I typed in a wildcard in that case, or EM, and said, give me any cabinets that have EM in them. So I just kind of wanted to get rid of some of those from this view. Now, I want to show you what I do when I open a cabinet. Let's open the employees cabinet. If you remember from this drawing here, you'll see that I'm about to, or I'm looking at, I'm sorry, this level right here. I am looking at the cabinets currently, okay? So when I click on a cabinet, I can see the folders. In other words, I can see this layer right here. Now, this layer of folders, if I'm in employees, would be my employee folders. So when I go back here, here I am. Now in the system, your administrators, or if you are an administrator as well, might have set up some subdividers. And what those are those are the little color tabs, as if you were going out to the store and buying those packets of 8 or whatever they are. They are unlimited in here though. And that when you click on them, you could see that you have documents within. Now, you as a user do not need to create these. These are ready to go. But if you'll notice here, when I click on this particular folder, I have more subdividers than I do for this person. That's only because these have documents in them. In fact, this person has documents in the subdivider called certifications, and this person does not. If you click on a subdivider, you are now down to the document level. And when I say document level, obviously you might have more than one file in a subdivider. Now, I'm going to scroll down here just a little bit, just to kind of get everything out of the way, and to look here at what you're seeing. I'm seeing a cabinet of employees. I happen to have a folder open. I happen to have these documents open. I can click on any of these to open those as well. But when I'm looking at these particular documents here on the screen, a couple of things that you'll notice about this file, about these files. There is an action button right here. This action button represents an action for a document. If you pick this action, which is above the subdivider, then you are performing an action on multiple or more than one file because you've selected more than one. If you would like to select all, there is an action button. Now, I'm going to go back up here and push the menu button, or I'm sorry, what happens to be my home screen, which will bring us back to this menu, because I am going to look at the data just a little bit differently. I'm going to select this screen right here, or what is the equivalent of, through the menus under locating, me going to the second option. When I click on this, it takes me to a screen which is laid out slightly different. Here, rather than seeing all the cabinets open, I could select and choose the cabinet, and I'm just going to type the letter E to get me closer. And I'm going to, and once again, please remember I created all these. That's why you're seeing all strange ones and ones that look very duplicated. Now, I like this screen because I have the ability to look them up or to verify who they are or what this is. For example, if I was dealing with clients and I was looking for a particular client that I can't remember their name, but I know it has BAR as a portion of it, I could click on search and find anybody that has that particular portion of the file, or I'm sorry, of that in their name. Now, if I go here to employees, I'm going to click on a particular employee. A little bit different than the screen you saw previously was that when I clicked on the employee, I had those subdivider sections, and those subdivider color sections were allowing me to filter or to look at only certain types of documents that were related in that filter. When I click on the folder right now, I'm opening up all of the documents that I have on this person, or vendor, or customer, or brochures, or whatever it is that you're working with. I'm going to scroll up here a little bit just to kind of get some of the documents to show, and you'll notice that I'm in this particular folder. You will notice once again what type of document it is, and you will notice a lot of additional information, such as metadata fields. Now, metadata fields, if you're not familiar with the term, are the fields that are indexing or mentioned as part of being able to search for those documents. We'll talk about searching shortly, but let's just take and open up a document for now. So, once again, you're seeing that I am here under this screen. I have this folder open, and you'll notice now I have subdividers. So, if you wanted to, first of all, I could sort by subdivider and see all of those together, or maybe I, quote, drill down. In other words, let me sort by document just so I can see different subdividers. So if I was to go in here and say, yes, I only want to see, though, subdivider section of contracts, so I could type in a part of that name or whatever, and I can simply hit the magnifying glass. And you'll notice that I'm only pulling up documents, which there's only one in this case, that have that subdivider of contracts. But while I'm looking at this particular folder of information, I might also only want to work with certain types of documents at this point. So for example, I might even say that I only want to look at documents that have been, instead of added, I'm going to say updated, which means either documents that have been added or changed. So they could have been added a long time ago, but they've been updated since July 1st that have the word building in them. When I hit the search button, you'll notice that I find 3 separate files. You will also notice there is a status here that shows checked in and checked out. There is one other status that you will see called hold. Now, if a document is checked out, you can still view it. You cannot update it. If a document is checked in, you can update it as well. One of the things, if you'd like to locate documents, as we've done here, if you'd like to open a file, you could simply click on this button right here and open up that document. Now, you'll notice that when you open an individual document, it opens up to a new tab for you so that when you want, or if you want, you can close this box here and be right back here. You could do that by hitting Control W or hitting this box. So if I do a Control W, it closed the tab for me. I could leave it open if I wanted to, but I just wanted to mention that anytime you do an individual document command that you're going to work with it, it will open in a new tab for you. So once again, I'm going to click on this document. When I click on the document, you will notice it opens up on this second screen over here. You will notice, obviously, the document on the right side and the metadata on the left side. Metadata for this particular type of document is an employee application. This employee application has these particular items or fields that are related to that type of document. So I could review that as well. Now, I'm going to go back here and just looking at these documents, you could see some things that I want to point out that we're going to be talking about the action button in the second or advanced class, but I am going to perform one action at the moment. And the one action I'm going to perform here is I'm going to click to select all of them. Obviously, I could have selectively chosen only a couple, but in this case, I've selected all of them. And rather than opening them individually, there's a couple of things you can do. If your intent was just to view these documents only, you can hit this button and go to the very bottom selection and say View Documents. What it will do is it will open up, since I had 3, it will open up all 3. You can scroll through the document to look at it here. You could also update the metadata fields. Here's those metadata fields, if I had to update some information about those documents. Also, one other thing. If you see a document and you go, you know, I'm going to open it, I have to do some annotations or mark it up or do some things like that, then what you can do is just click directly in here, and it will open the document to the screen I was on just a moment ago. You will notice something else over here. There is Edit Metadata. There is not over here. The document, I remember, was checked out, so I can't mark up, edit, change the information, check it out again until this document gets checked back in. I could still open it and view it on the large screen, but that's why you might notice sometimes edit metadata is not there. Now, if I'd like, I could just click within the parentheses and it will take me and open that document once again. As you see, it's opening in a new tab. One of the other things, though, that I'm going to do is close this. And I wanted to mention one other function about working with documents when you're looking at them at least, and that is I'm going to select them again. And you'll notice that in here there is a queue. Now, if I just say add to a new queue, meaning that I just want to pick all three of these and get started, if I hit the button, notice what's happening. It's opening up the first document. Now, let's say I do something to this document. Maybe I update some information and I save it. Now, it will clear away, but I don't have to go back and select the next one either. I could just hit the next button. It will open in a new tab for me. And here I can go, and then I can go to the next one and so forth. So I can make my way through the documents by just hitting the next arrow or previous arrow as well. So that is a time saver when you're moving through documents. Now, I'm going to go back to another screen, which on this particular menu screen is going to be the bottom one where it says for the content search. And so besides that, I could have also gone to the menu under locating and content search. Okay, so right now what I'm going to do is I want to search some things throughout not just one folder, but I want to be able to search maybe the entire system. If my intent was to search for the word building and the word PinPoint, you will notice that these ones that you are filling in for content are actually going to look at the words within the documents, including Word, Excel, and standard type files. So if all I wanted to do was look for content, in this case, and I hit search, you'll notice it found 3 documents. Obviously, if I change this to an OR, I'm going to get more results, I assume, and I have. In fact, I got about 100 documents maybe or so. But one of the things that you'll notice too is I could have done additional things such as date ranges. Or I could have said I only want to look at purchase orders or any other type of document that I have. I could have said I only want to look at customers if that's what I wanted to do. So these are conditions, including notes within the document, including folder notes, and remember metadata. If I said, find that plus any document that referenced client 5, I could do a search and find any documents that had also client 5 as part of the metadata information, for example. So, very powerful screen. You should try playing with this because when you do, check your results. I can do things as simple as, let me see today's documents, all of them. And if I had any in here, I could see those. You will also notice that documents can be tagged. We'll talk about tagging a document in the next session, but if you were to search on tags, I don't know, I'm going to clear this first. If I were to just go out and I don't know what tags I have, so I can't do other criteria, but here's one that is tagged for, public as an example. Okay, so we've talked about this side of the board as far as looking up files. Once again, I can go to the menu to do it, or if I use one particular screen more often, I can use these buttons here to make favorites. Now, to file individual documents or to drag and drop, I'm going to leave these alone today, and I'm actually going to stay within here because I'll explain why. I'm going to go in to a folder right now. Now, if I have the folder selected, when I go in to add a document or drag and drop documents or scan a document in, I don't have to tell it what folder to go to because I'm already there. In other words, I can save myself keystrokes. So as a very simplistic example, if I was to go in here and say single file, you'll notice that I can now say, oh, okay, this is a client or whoever, and let me look up the client. It's, let's say BAR. It's part of their name. And it fills it in for me. Okay. But I was going to use, instead of that, I was going to just be where I was at, meaning if you like this screen right here and you happen to be in a particular folder, let's say I'm right here and you wanted to add a document, you could still drag and drop, or you could still go in and file the document just like I was a moment ago. But one of the things that you'll notice is that it filled out, it was going into this folder already and so forth. It already has the cabinet. So, depending on which screen you like, you can launch that from any location. I'm going to go back to this screen, and I want to show you a couple other things that I could have shown you on that previous screen that I was on that looks like Explorer or Finder. But I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to open up a folder. Now, if I go to add a file from this location, right here by saying add a new file, I am in a document, so it has metadata and so forth. So what it'll do is, watch what happens. When I am at this level and I say add a new file, what it does is it fills in not only the cabinet and the folder, but it even took the metadata from the previous record for that document type. Now I could change whatever I need to. But the point is that I can save a lot of keystrokes that way. Now watch this. If you were to hit this button instead, meaning you are not on a specific document, but you are in a folder, and again, we call this a group action versus an individual document action, but in this case, you're at this level, you're not looking at a particular document level, so if you hit the same add new file, you'll notice that it has the folder filled in, but I now need to pick what subdivider I want that to go into and what document type that is. Once you select the document type, here's the metadata that you can fill in. If you notice a red asterisk by any of the fields, that means you will be required to fill that in before you can save the document or file. Now, I'm going to go back and let's see about adding files. So before, when we were looking at the menu, we saw how to add a single file, we saw how to scan a file, and we saw how to do multiple files or drag and drop. So let's do drag and drop first. So right here, I'm in this folder, and I'm going to click on this button, and I'm going to say drag file. What you'll know is that I'm already in a particular folder. So if I were to drag in some documents here, I'm just looking for some stuff I have. Let's just say I wanted this and this. I could have dragged them both in at the same time, obviously. Now, at this point, here's the document type. I say, oh, this is, vendor agreements or whatever they are, invoices. Here's the metadata for the documents. Now, if you fill out that information and you hit import all, then both documents will go into the system with those attributes. If you had 10 files here, they will go in so you don't have to key in all 10. If you dragged and dropped a bunch in here, but you wanted to set different attributes for this one instead, you could go in, and maybe this document happens to be a project, so I fill out the information, and then I would hit save. By hitting save, it will only take that one file. When I get it to a point where I can just finish them off, I can just hit import all, or I could hit import all right now as well and fill in that information. Or I'm sorry, import those two documents or two files. Now, that was filing multiple. If I go back to the menu here and select multiple documents, this too is a drag and drop screen, but just like you saw before, we're in a single file. When I was on that menu, I had to select the cabinet and then the folder. I have to do the same thing here. I have to go, okay, these are going to accounting. Okay, I'm going to pick, what folder I could select the folder it's going to, and then I'm going to select the document type. So the thing that is nice about this, though, is that let's say that I dragged and dropped 5 documents in here, and I import all those. And I've got some more documents, but it's a different client. The nice part about using this screen is now I can just go here and go, oh, okay, now let's do 10 into this one. Boom, hit the button. So when you're on this screen, you will notice there's a filing menu. This filing menu correlates, these two right here, correlate with the same thing that I was seeing when I hit either this button or this button, meaning it took me to those screens without knowing what folder I was at and letting me put that information in. On this side, or on these two, I should say, I'm already in the folder, so it's slightly different because it already knows who I want to work with when I put those documents in. Now, let's talk about another way to import. So first we had the drag and drop from here. Second, I could say add a new file. When I say add a new file, I have two choices on adding a new file right now. Actually, there's three, but I'm going to just mention two right at the moment. The third is a form, but we'll talk about that later. Now, I'm ready to put a file in. If I have a Twain device scanner, TWAIN, which most all scanners, that's the standard. If I do, I can hit the scan button. When I hit the scan button, I can select my scanner and hit scan. Now I'm going to do black and white. If that's what I was going to do, I'm going to use the sheet feeder and resolution is going to be 300. That's the normal setting you should use. Black and white, 300, and if you have a sheet feeder. Okay, notice this one that says UI, that stands for user interface, which simply means if you have additional functions on your scanner that aren't in these basic ones that you want to use right now, you check that box, and when you hit scan, it's going to bring up whatever the driver is. Like in this case, I only have this driver, so it brought up this where I could make changes. So what I wanted to explain to you is this box is only checked if you wanted to bring up your screen, which is called a driver screen, that's related to your scanner to make some specific settings based on you like your scanner rather than just kind of just doing quickly black and white 300, add it in. Okay? And then after you scan it, and the pages will go by. If you have a few pages, it'll show them as they go by. And then you hit save, and the document will appear here. The document will be saved as a PDF. You also could import a file. If you go here by this arrow and selectively choose File, you can select the file that you'd like to bring in. Now, one of the things that you need to note is if you ever bring in a file that is not a PDF, which is absolutely fine, I'm just going to bring this one in. Notice what I see at first. When I first import this, you're going to see a screen that says the document is not viewable yet, because behind the scenes, we're going to make a PDF for you so that you'll have a PDF to view here, and it's just not there yet. After I save the file, it might take a few moments, few minutes even, but I'm not really working on it at that point, so I don't really care if it takes a few minutes after that, but it'll make the viewable image for you. So you can then go in and then look at that PDF as well. So far you've had the ability to scan directly. You have the ability to import an individual file. You have ability to drag and drop files, and that you're already in that folder. If you were to use these filing, these are not coming from a folder, so in this case, you're going to put in your information like what is the cabinet and so forth. Now, another thing to note about the system is these function keys over here. I'm sorry, well, we call them favorite keys, but function keys. These favorite keys can be defined by you. So like I like this particular screen to go to the content search. I like this screen as what I'll call a dashboard. Don't need to worry about what these different screens do or what they are, other than you should go in and look at those and try them out. Now, I want to set mine up. You will notice after you've logged in that you will see a welcome and your username. Click on that username, and when you do, it'll bring up your profile. Now, you've probably seen this screen before, but one of the things to note is a few things that we're going to talk about right here. Oops, I'm sorry. Sorry, I got to get it off that. There we go. Right here in the middle. Right here in the middle, you will notice there is a favorite home button, which is the house. There is a favorite search button, which is the magnifying glass. There is a favorite filing button, and your favorite dashboard. This button right here will take you to the last document that you either added or updated, whether that was now, yesterday, or whenever that happened to be. So, in the system, you can set your favorite buttons and then selectively choose. So let's say that I was going to select my favorite home button to be this particular screen, and I'm going to take it a step further. Not only first, and by the way, you notice saves all over the place. Anytime you make a change to this section, as an example, hit save, and it saves that portion, as you can see here. So I can go through and select what screens I want to have for the different types of buttons that I have up there. Now, what I want to show you is this portion down here, default settings. Under the default settings, one of the things that you'll notice is I could have it, let's say that I work with employees, I'm in HR. So when I go into the system, I want it to open up to to employees, and I don't care what subdivider, and I'm going to save that as well. Now, if you make a change to this section here, you simply have to log off and log back in. So I'm going to hit the log out button here, and that's what you should do when you're done. You should hit the log out button. When you log out, you'll be taken to this screen. Now, let's talk about logging in for a moment. Normally, when you log in by filling in your username and password, you will be taken directly to your home screen. For me, I have extra what we call file rooms, so you can ignore this screen for just a moment, but I have different ones to show for my different examples. But look what happened. It came right into the system, and it already had my employees ready to look up. And that's because I made my home key that. So once again, whatever screen I'm on, even if I were to go, and this is kind of neat because watch this. I hit the home button, and it brings me right to the employees. If I were to use the Explore type screen, watch what happens when I bring up Browse Folders. It comes up with only the employees. So I didn't even have to see any of the others. Now again, remember, you might not be able to see them anyway because you might not have the ability to. But I wanted to point out that you can do some shortcuts by setting up your profile. Also in your profile, this is very important, to set your security question. You probably already have, but this is where you set that. And when you will be asked the security question is when it sees you go to a computer that you haven't been at. Now, if you, let's say you were at work today and you go on the system, and next week you go on and you're on your computer and it asks you that security question again, that's because maybe what we call IP addresses, which are part of the whole internet and the whole infrastructure of every communication that goes on, maybe your IP address changed, and so it doesn't know about that. But I mention that because we will remember your last 10 stations per user that you've been at, so you don't have to fill that on each time. When you are asked the security question, it'll ask you if it's a private station. If you check that box, it will remember that station. If you don't check the box, you will continually be asked to do that particular screen. The other thing is if a user ever comes into the system and hasn't answered their security question, no matter what they have for their home key, they could be using the system for 2 months. But if they haven't filled out this portion yet, it's going to always come to this screen right out of the login, immediately to that screen to fill in some information. So, just to kind of quickly wrap up before we take questions, I was going through the menu here, and I picked on a few things. We talked and looked at these two as far as single filing an individual document versus filing by dragging and dropping and selecting the folder information all the way down to the document information. In here, we looked at how to look up information both by an Explorer type view and the view that shows behind me right on this screen. We also looked at what we called content search, where I could go into the system and I can do a search finding information based on my parameters that I'm looking for. Okay, with that, I'm going to stop the recording here and let's open it up for some questions.